This is why you would not survive history in LEGO. So I did some calculations, and this is what you look like.
Bruh.
And now we're gonna travel back in time, all the way back to the Stone Age. So to build this time era, I just placed these big stones. Ow. Congratulations, you've arrived in the Stone Age. And the first thing you'll notice is the extreme weather. And this weather was either really heavy rain or ice cold blizzards. And these could last for hundreds of years. So if you couldn't find shelter in time, you would just freeze to death. If you somehow managed to survive the weather, there were still a lot of wild and dangerous animals, like the boar, and they could easily overpower and eat you. The Stone Age is also called the time of hunters and gatherers, because these were the only ways to get food. But you had to be very careful with the plants you ate, because some of them were poisonous. Damn, what did bro even eat?
Bruh.
You could also run into other cavemen, and these cavemen were usually not friendly to strangers. Okay, I think you've suffered enough in the Stone Age. Next we're traveling to the Bronze Age, which is the time period civilization started growing. And in these civilizations everyone shared everything with each other. You would even get all your food from the same farm. But this also meant it could easily get stolen. And then you and your entire village would starve to death. Living in civilizations also meant there were rules. And one of the most obvious rules is not to steal. But if you did steal, you should try not to get caught, because then they would punish you by cutting off your hand. But there were also more extreme punishments, like impaling you with a spear. Or they would throw you into the deep ocean, and people couldn't swim in this era, so you would instantly drown.
Bruh.
Civilizations were also at war all the time, and you were forced to fight in this war, which means you would probably get killed in combat. And even if you were just slightly injured, you would still die, because your wound would get infected, and medicine wasn't invented yet. During this time we also started riding horses, but we were still pretty awe at it,
Bruh.
and a lot of deadly accidents would happen. Ow! Next we're traveling to the Iron Age, which is best known for the Roman Empire. And if you were not a Roman, you should try not to get caught by them, because they would instantly kill you. And if they didn't kill you, they would just turn you into their slave. Or they would throw you into their arenas, where you were forced to fight to the death. Oh crap. If you were born a Roman during this time, it wasn't much better. And the first reason for that is because Romans would only let the most perfect babies live. Yo, this baby is chopped. Let's kill it. Damn, bro really spawn killed him. The Romans were also known for their harsh punishments. Like for something as simple as just stealing, you could get executed. But this wasn't even the worst punishment, because you could also get crucified. And this meant that they would hang you on a cross until you starved to death. Next we have the medieval era, which is known for the castles and knights. But unfortunately you would probably be born just a peasant.
Bruh.
And the job of a peasant was to work the land and raise animals for food. And this is a relatively safe job. But the downside of this is that it paid pretty much no money. So if you wanted to earn more, you had to become a blacksmith. And as a blacksmith you would create weapons for soldiers. And this paid really good for a peasant. But working with fire was really dangerous, because it could quickly get out of hand. And then you would just be cooked. Yeah, that's honestly a skill issue.
Bruh.
As a peasant you also had to look out for the Vikings, because these guys just like to kill you for no reason. In kingdoms everyone lived really close to each other, which means that diseases can spread really quickly. And the worst disease of the time was the plague, which killed 2/3 of Europe. Eh? I'm alive, yay! Being a girl in this era was also really dangerous, because you ran the risk of being called a witch. And then all the other peasants would team up on you and burn you on a stake. Ow, 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 ow. Even though you weren't a real soldier, you were still forced to fight in the battles. And like all the other peasants, you have no money for armor, which means that you're cooked. Now what if you were born as a knight? Well, firstly you'd be pretty rich, because knights were in the top 1% of the population. But the only thing knights really cared about was competing in tournaments. And the most popular sport they did was jousting, where two knights have to knock each other off their horses. But this was a really dangerous sport, and many knights would die from breaking their necks. Knights were best known for wearing heavy armor, which protected them from steel weapons. But it was also really heavy, so if someone pushed you in the water you would just drown.
Bruh.
After the medieval era, the age of exploration began, when adventurers would travel the world to find new land. And these voyages were super dangerous. And this had multiple reasons. The first reason is because they didn't have proper maps yet, so it was pretty much impossible to know if there were dangerous rocks in your path. And if you crashed into them, you would just sink. Voyages often took many months, which means you had to bring a lot of food. But the boats you were using weren't really stable, and food could easily fall into the ocean, and then you would just die from starvation. You could also run into the feared pirates, which were the outlaws of the sea, and they just attacked any ship that they saw, and would then throw you overboard. But if you didn't have any problems, you would arrive after a few months, and now you've discovered new land, where no one's ever been before. But then you realize that you aren't alone, and people have actually been living here for thousands of years. And they're not really welcoming. Meanwhile, back in Europe they found a new way to execute people, with a device called the guillotine. And this device just dropped a big and heavy blade on your neck. In the early 1900s the World War era began, which consisted of the First World War and the Second World War. And everyone above the age of 18 was forced to fight in these wars. And it costed the lives of millions of people on both sides. And the main reason for that is because of the new weapons they developed, like the hand grenade. And also obviously the guns. These wars lasted for multiple years. And most of this time the troops weren't actually fighting. They were actually just camping in their trenches. Yo, someone ban these campers.
Bruh.
The soldiers would sometimes stay in these trenches for years, even during the worst weather. And this meant that a lot of soldiers would get really sick. And because the trenches were really small, sickness would spread quickly. And this killed almost as many people as the actual fighting did. There was also not that much food for the soldiers, because it was hard to deliver. So starvation was also a big cause of death. Soldiers were not allowed to peek over the trenches, or else you would just get sniped. So you've been chilling in the trenches for a few years now. And then one day your commander orders you to attack the enemy. And if you disobey, he'll shoot you. So you and the boys have no choice and climb out of the trenches. And immediately the enemy starts shooting at you. And then you all just get cooked. And these were the reasons why you wouldn't survive history. And if you disagree, let me know which time periods you would survive. Me personally, I just survived them all.